see people are here.
Yes.
Liam, would you kindly grab my little green bottle when you come back?
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you.
Who's her? Who's there? Catchy tunes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
You're fine. Heavy. You could line these up if you wanted to. Okay. I need to make up 10 minutes, you think?
Yes, we have until 6:45.
Is that it?
6:44 will end.
Okay. Good job. Thank you. All right, take it away.
Okay, so Dana and I are going to share with you, where we are on budget development, and we welcome your questions, input along the way. But we're gonna move ahead with the same general structure as the last couple of times we had a work session. So we're going to follow a similar agenda with the overview, talk about some of the key issues, the process, and then Dana will get into some of the additional details. There are changes since the last time, and we want to let you know what those are, and hopefully set the stage for the final work session, which is scheduled to be the same day we vote on the budget. So, that being said, I want to hit some of the key factors for this draft budget. So a lot of the information we didn't know, we now know. And we'll share with you what some of those things are. So with the exception of an important number, which is our state aid number, which we'll only know after the state budget, and then a piece of the usual BOCES budget is technical services that are provided by NERIC, and that's Northeast Regional Information Center. They're like BOCES, regional service providers. So there are some things we still don't know or we're working on. So that's one of the key factors. Another one is that although we're closing the gap between what we anticipate to be revenue and expenses, it's not closed yet, so there's still a $90,000 or so gap between what we anticipate spending and what we anticipate receiving. However, the budget continues to maintain our staff and our program and preserves our material and equipment. We do have some increases, and Dana has already shared some of those with you, and I'm sure he'll share any more that have come up. What's included in this budget is, and again, some of this we've said before, we just want to make sure that anybody, any other interested person from the community who wants to know, we can share this with them too, so that they're at the same general level as all of us. So this budget includes all known actual salaries. By known, we mean that there are some unknown, and that's new hires and what those actual salaries will be for them. But we do know what our salary increases are for three important areas: support staff, faculty, and administration. So all that's in. It's just the unknown additional hires that will be coming in as the spring progresses. We also, so we know what our retirements are, at least up to this point. You've already acknowledged and approved the retirements of a number of people. We also have learned what our health insurance premium is, the increase in the health insurance premium. So the flat number is 2%, and Dana can share with you any more information about that. And then our BOCES expenses, we did receive updated information on that. We received it, and then since we received it and since it got entered in this budget, there's actually been just a couple of minor changes. So we'll update that probably for the next time. Questions on that?
The 90 shortfall right now, is that, you have an estimate for what you think state aid's going to be in the budget?
So we're using the executive budget.
Yeah.
And so we're anticipating that the approved budget, once the legislature gets through it and they all agree, we're anticipating it being higher, but we're not using an estimated higher number. We're using what the executive budget had for us. Other highlights, again, some of this is not news to you, but some is, and that's where that is. I crossed out old numbers and added in new ones. The CPIU this year was higher than 2%, which means our cap is locked in at 2%, lower than the rate of inflation. Our property tax cap, you know that was tentative last time, and it did change. And Dana can share with you, or you already has shared with you a document on that. We'll talk about that later, but our tax cap is now at 2.1%. And we're using like I just said, we're using the executive branch estimate for state aid. Other highlights, let's see, again, a lot of this is repeated. The contractual salary increases of 3.5% and 3% are still in there. The BOCES increase, we anticipated 4%, it's really at this point, 4.32%. And where that's mostly coming in, and again, Dana can share more with you, that's mostly coming in not the administrative costs, and certainly not the capital costs, but at the CTE level. In other words, that's what it's costing us to send our students to attend the classes at the BOCES Center, Adirondack Ed Center. And the reason why it's higher, frankly, is because we have more students than ever attending there, and we probably have, and in some areas, especially the TASK area, that's the alternative ed program, our students are a higher percentage than any other district in there, so we pay the bulk of those costs. So 4.32% as opposed to the original 4% estimate. I told you about a 2% health insurance premium increase. You won't see 2% next to the total cost of what our health insurance is, because actual health insurance premiums change depending on how many employees, whether employees have a single plan or a family plan, right? So there's a lot more to it than just the premium increase. The 2% premium increase gets calculated in, but Dana's provided an estimate that would be different. You may have already seen different percentage change, and that's because there are these additional positions and some other, you have to make some estimates, again, based on things we know, but also things we don't know. Our teacher retirement system cost, we've made some changes there, and that's gone down, and so we had already been expecting a decrease, and now we're looking at a decrease of $89,339 over last year, a decrease from last year. And then the employee retirement system, that's where the support staff retirement system is still at 15.5%, about the same as this year. So numbers, when you look at the actual numbers, as we get closer to what we'll see, what we expect to see, what the board can expect to approve, and then what we expect to see the public voting on. Our expenses right now, $19,685,085. Our tax levy. Now the tax levy number is not the same as the tax cap, because in other words, if we were to fully fund what we have in here as expenses, we would actually be raising taxes 2.52%, not 2.10%. So that's where the differential is, right? So what you'll see right now is that a tax levy that worked for what we've got in there, $15,983,167, but that is $90,504 over the tax cap. So you see those numbers elsewhere on the spreadsheet, and I'm just trying to put it in some kind of perspective for you. Questions about that? We haven't made a lot of changes in here, included in the March draft budget. A lot of items that you've seen before. We still haven't moved other items up into that area, and that's frankly because this is a very tight budget. We did not get a dramatic, assuming we stick with the tax cap, we will not see a dramatic increase in our ability to pay for things, and so additions are just tough. And so again, Dana can share with you where some of those items are in the more detailed budgetary spreadsheet.
So these things that are not included are just not going to happen?
Or they're not in there right now, or if they do happen, they'll happen in another way. Sometimes we can pull out of existing budget lines. So for example, let's take the gym refinishing. I'm going to bring that up. The gym refinishing, we do expect to move ahead with that. We would love to have a separate line item for that so that we can continue to maintain the accounts that we have, or the line items that we have at the same level. If we can't put that in the budget separately, then we will probably use whatever the cost is, approximately $10,000, out of an existing budgetary, budgeted amount, probably in one of the maintenance funds. So could still happen, but it would have to happen in another way. Some of them won't happen. The field trips, we tend to figure out how to do that. Fifth grade field trip, we're gonna make sure we continue that. This is an attempt to put it into a separate line. Equipment, sometimes like the treadmill, we can often fund, sometimes we're able to cover those costs at the end of the present year if we haven't, if we've incurred some savings along the way. So if we have, then sometimes we can take advantage of that and purchase some things even earlier than next year. So yes, there are some different ways we can do things, but some of the positions especially are things that we're unlikely to see unless we're able to figure it out for the next time, or unless we were to have some other changes that allow us to make that adjustment without any additional costs or revenue. Same graph as last time. Again, this is just to share with people how our budgets now really have to align with the CPI. Budget process continues to be the same. We continue to make revisions. We continue to address some of the questions that come up and suggestions that come up in future planning, like that list that we were just talking about. And then we continue to make whatever strategic changes we can as we can.
Have we thought, I mean, I sound like a broken record here, but have we thought about charging for our buses for certain things that we don't charge for now?
Or,
I mean,
or
it looks
not,
like,
or not running some of the buses, yeah.
okay. Like I'm thinking this St. Agnes summer program, we bus them somewhere, 2 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
We're paying the maintenance of the bus, the gas, the bus driver.
Yeah, we didn't do some of the St. Agnes busing last summer, but we did do some.
Right. Just the summer program. I don't care about what goes on, during the school year. There's things that, they need, but,
So what John's talking about is that we do provide busing for some of our, I guess we'll just call them neighbors, and in some cases we charge, and in some cases it's some kind of fair exchange, and in some cases it's just a continued service. Or we tend to have some kind of exchange. It's not a balance sheet, but it is an exchange of sorts. And in St. Agnes, we do tend to provide them with transportation throughout the year, and then in the summers, including field trips. So not all of that's mandated, and that's Joe's point.
With Ironman, who negotiates that deal with them? Is that done through the town, or is that the village?
We do it ourselves. It's a 5-year agreement, so we have contracts for each Ironman event. There's 2. We have 2 contracts. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much spelled out. Okay. Yeah. As far as things that are still unknown, the things that we've crossed off, we know, right? And just again, this is just a different way of looking at it. Final state aid amounts April 1st, we hope. Final special ed costs. We're as we do our planning for next year, we continue to sort of massage those expectations. Right now, we think we've got in there what's sort of a general expectation, but there can be changes to that. Sometimes up, sometimes down. And then, some of those future planning expenses that we still have on that long list and elsewhere are not, could be pieces in there, should we be able to make it work. So the next information is going to come from Dana. He's going to get into a little bit more detail, and that's the overview, the details, the revenue, and the tax cap calculation. And so we've organized this again, same way as we did last time, with this spreadsheet first. Do you want to start that?
Sure.
And then I do have a couple of extra graphs I was going to share with you, things that might go into the public presentation in April and May. In May, really. So go ahead, Dan.
So this first slide, you've seen this chart before, and if you were to compare them, you'll obviously see that there's been changes to it as the unknown becomes known. And really what this is saying is from last year's budget to this year's budget, what is the current increase? And that's the $392,000. And as Roger was saying, if we were to fully fund all the changes from, that are increases, that is the levy of 2.52% for the difference of a little over 2%. Obviously, that 2.52% for our tax levy, it exceeds our 2.10. So unless we are willing to take a budget that exceeds that to the public, this number will continue to change. But I do want to really stress that what you're seeing here is nothing more than what is being added to this current year's budget for numbers. And then if you were to, but if you're looking at what we increase for our tax levy, that's where most of that revenue is really coming from, and that's why we at this point have about a $90,000 difference between the two. Yes, as Roger said, salary increases have gone down because we've had 10 retirees. People announced they're retiring, so now that has been factored in. The unknown is who we hire. We estimate, what their salary could be based on what has been done in the past, but until we actually go through the interview process, we won't know exactly who we hire. So, that could be a change once we actually get down to, the people themselves. The FICA is pretty straightforward. The ERS, you'll see that's gone down, and that's really, even though the percentage is the same, we've had a couple retirees this year, and as a result, next year's rate is lower because we're going off of a lower salary. The individuals that we hired to replace those retirees, their salaries are much lower, and it's based off of salary calculations, as well as the teacher retirements. With the 10 retirees, estimating what the new salaries will be, plus a reduction in the TRS to about 9%. That's where we're seeing a decline in about $90,000. The dental and vision, that's still sitting at 0. We're waiting on an actual quote from Excelis for the dental and from Davis. But everything that I've seen is those numbers usually stay pretty flat. Those numbers don't change too much. We are, the number for BOCES and other programs, we're 95% certain in terms of what that is. And Roger mentioned some of the still unknowns, but those are going to be small, small changes. Is where it comes down to. The big change you'll see is health insurance, about $262,000. We do have those numbers based off of our current staffing. The biggest unknown, and why that number is larger is 10 new hires. So when someone retires, even though their salaries are the salaries for the most part are being reduced, and we don't have to pay into TRS based on those 10, those retirees, their health insurance stays with us. We continue to fund it, and they continue to pay their portion of it. So we are actually we'll be adding 10 new positions, potentially 10 new health spots. So that's where you'll see a big jump there is because of that. So we are saving in salary, but some of the savings that we see in a change in salaries are going to be offset by an increase in our health insurance because of the 10 positions. At the same time, that's still an unknown because we don't know if it's going to be a single plan or a family plan or if they elect not to take the plan. So we have gone with an estimate. Roger and I, we were talking about it, and we basically looked at what our typical, our cost is per employee. We look at our overall number, the number of people in our current plan, and we said this is what on average we are spending per person, and it's just under $15,000. when you take the average between individual versus family plan versus those that are on Medicare. So this is what it is. An individual plan is about $9,000. A family plan is about $22,000. So that's where there's a big discrepancy. We could budget for 10 new family plans at about $222,000 extra. But we've gone with more of a statistical analysis of it and said this is what we're spending per person statistically speaking, and have increased it. So about $145,000 of this increase is the anticipation of new hires. So that's why that number is, where it is. Questions on the budget estimate sheet?
So there is dental and vision, we just don't know how much it's gonna cost.
Right, but that's been pretty flatlined for the last few years. So that typically you don't see a fluctuation in that coverage as much as you do in the health, the major medical.
I see, okay.
Yes. For whatever reason, those numbers usually stay pretty flat.
So Dana's going to talk about the detailed budget, and I guess I just wanted to provide you with a couple of slides of overview while you're looking at it, right? So when Dana goes through it, he goes through it in terms of the 3 different budgetary areas: administrative, program, and capital. That's how our all school district budgets are broken into those 3 areas. Program, remember, is where those are kids programs, right? Those are everything from teachers, extracurriculars, and transportation. Everything that involves kids is in the program. Administrative is essentially this building and the people who work here, plus our administration, our principals, and then capital involves our maintenance, right? So the message here, of course, is that most of our budget goes to programs, right? So typically when people look at organizations like ours, they do look to administration. They say, how can we cut on administration? What we want you to know, we want the public to know, is most of it is in program. And that has gone up. And the reason why it's gone up, that red chunk has become larger, I guess is a better message. The reason why is because when we make changes every year, we do try and hone in and focus on the program area rather than the administrative and the capital area. So all the work that Dana's put into, all those 300-something lines has resulted in a decrease in our costs, our administrative costs, from last year, and that's a decrease of 1.8%. An increase in our programs higher than the tax cap. So in other words, the tax cap's at 2.1%. Program costs are increasing by still under 3, but close to 3%. And then our capital is pretty flat. Okay, so again, every year we strive to address these 3 areas this way, and that's why that red chunk of the pie continues to grow as opposed to the other two. It does. Okay, so we're back to Dana and the details.
Before you start, do you have another chart that takes the program components and breaks it out, in terms of kind of like the one you just showed?
I don't right now.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to.
Yeah.
Because we know what the bigger components are anyway, but.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. That's a good suggestion.
So looking at the spreadsheet, I won't go into great detail, line by line or anything like that. We spent a lot of time on that the last workshop. But to kind of give some specific numbers to Roger's graphs, if you had the 13-page document and you're looking through it, the first 3 pages cover the administrative component of that, and there's a 1.74 decrease, a hard number of $1.946 million is what we're projected to spend in the administrative portion of it. Whereas the programming portion of it, again, if you're trying to keep track, it's pages 4 through 10. Actually 10 and a half. It goes on to page 11. That's a 2.9% increase overall. That's $14,897,000 of the proposed budget. And then the capital is the remaining, and that is just about 0.25%, 2.84 million is slated for that. Come up with the $16.68 million. Line by line, there hasn't been a lot of changes other than looking for ways to close the gap. Because I think the last time we were still, a couple $100,000 off. And to close the gap as that in terms of, the revenue side of it is for the most part a known part, known, other than the, if we see anything, changing with the state, I think it's going to be if it's an increase, it's going to be a nominal increase. I would be shocked, as well as Roger would say the same thing, if we saw, something that was greater than, $20,000 more than what the executive budget is. It's just because we're considered a well-funded districts. So even if we got a 1% increase in foundation aid, which is the bulk of our aid from last year, that would really just increase our current numbers by about $15,000. So that's really not a huge, not a huge jump in terms of expected revenue. Some of the other revenue portions of it are unknown in terms of tuition and stuff like that. This year we have 5 international students that are paying. Right now, that's an unknown. We don't know if we're going to have 5. I don't know if we have anyone specifically slated yet coming through the visa program and educations. So that's kind of an up and down. It's always an unknown every year because of host families and things like that. But other than making some reductions, and you can go through this and see where the reductions have been made in order to close that gap. Do you have any questions on this detailed spreadsheet?
What does the yellow and green mean?
The yellow was 17 and 18, just kind of showing you some historical information there. Yeah, you have 17 and 18, you have 19 and 20. Oh, I'm looking at page
17,
4.
18
Yeah,
over here.
18, 19, sorry.
18, 19.
I was looking at a
It's
different
this year.
page. Yeah.
This year.
Yeah, this year is yellow, and then the green is projected and adjustments, and then the last column is what we're going off of with the adjustments. So if you look at that proposed adjustments, that's where you're going to see where changes have been, whether they've been additions or deletions or subtractions.
Dana, with, I think, it's 4 months left or so, just short, in the budget.
What's that?
In this year's budget, there's about 4 months left.
Yeah, we're halfway through March, so April, May, June, so 3.5 months.
Is there anything that stands out where there'll be a little left over? At this point, I know it's a little early, but.
Well, the hope is that there's still going to be a little left over. We still have the limestone project, which is going to take about $100,000 out of our general fund. So already, like last year, you spent about $100,000 with money that was left over for the security cameras. Kind of using that same anticipation that we're going to have at least that amount to cover the front of it. TRS, it was a little lower than what was budgeted, so there's probably going to be some additional funds there. Having the unknowns, we've had a number of additional substitutes, long-term subs that weren't budgeted, so that's where kind of it's hard to say because we've had some unknowns. I see in the budget we're going to be, you guys are going to be, not me, discussing and voting on another change. And that just is what happens when students come and go and program changes during the year. The goal is to meet the needs of the students. And if that means hiring someone, then that's what we do, and we find a way to fund it. So I'm not anticipating a $500,000-600,000, surplus, but, again, a best case estimates right now is, I would say, in that $200,000 to $300,000 range.
Is there any way to move the limestone project into the capital project, since the ramp is closed anyway at this point? I mean, I don't think
The limestone's different than the ramp.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, just thinking, like, I know once of repair and maintenance, the ramp is too, if you think about it. Is this something we could do? It's just coming out of a different, different pocket, but it doesn't impact.
It would help, I mean, I don't know the answer.
Just think about our
It would still be the same cost, though. And
same
then-
cost,
Yeah,
but a different pocket.
right.
Yeah, and that maybe leaves us a little bit more powder for maybe covering the shortfall. Thought.
Yeah, I think at this point it would be considered like an add-on, and if the money, if the money's in once the bids come out and we get back numbers from contractors, they look at, okay, because we have a number of add-ons that will go out, and if the money's there, we can do that. I think the reason it was looked at by doing it separately is the fact that there are 3 doors that are not accessible, and in case of emergencies like that, it's
Because of the limestone, you mean?
correct.
Yeah.
We've had to shut basically down the 3 doors in the foyer. In the case of an emergency, those barriers in front of them can be removed and you can leave, but at this point, in terms of the safety concern, I think that's why it was looked at, trying to do it. But I mean, it's a perfectly good question, because at this point, we're going to be doing it in April and starting the project in June.
We're going to be done before the school.
Right.
Get it done anyway, so
Absolutely,
that's kind
yes,
of my reason for asking.
absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Other than manpower, they may not have the manpower to start the auditorium, the ramp, and the limestone all at the same time.
Well, we already awarded the limestone contract.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Yes,
we did.
yeah.
It was awarded way back in October, November?
Yeah, it was just, just as the snow was falling.
Yeah.
It was just about November, and, we had an early winter, if you will, in
We're waiting
November.
for
and-
spring.
Yeah. The goal is still,
Still could be
for
June.
spring break, right, it still could be June, right, absolutely. And who knows, I mean, maybe if, once contracts come back and bids are in, and if, it comes lower than anticipated, looking at,
Yeah, I was just saying, if it's an option, maybe that's something we could consider if we need to find some money somewhere.
Right.
There's a different way of paying for that.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
not an issue,
And at this point, I feel comfortable saying that the money's there in terms of some maintenance funds for repair and construction, to say that I think we needed about $100,000. You guys agreed to moving $30,000 over from last year's budgets, and that's in there. And as it stands right now, I feel comfortable saying that there's about another $100,000 just in kind of some maintenance funds that we could use that would otherwise be considered leftover funds.
We'd still need to get the budget down under the cap, and then,
That's where we look at, as we get closer to June and we have a better understanding of what surplus it is, we look at the things in terms of the treadmill and the risers at the elementary school, and doing things like that. The gym floor, they're already looking at maintenance funds, just in the regular general lines to do that this summer, depending on what the actual cost comes in. But already kind of planning that anyway. The last few years, they worked on replacing flooring in classrooms and putting that off for a year so that we can, say, address the gym floor or some other maintenance issues. There are no floors at this point that are in dire need to get switched from carpet to tile.
Do you want to talk about revenue at all?
Yes. Well, and again, here, the only real difference is there has been a change in the real property tax, the tax levy. You saw that. It was 1.99. It is now up to 2.1. So So there has been a change there. It went up about $12,000. That can be, and that kind of ties into the next page, directly attributed to with the property tax calculation. If you look at that, why there's a change is one of the exemptions that we can kind of pull out and then put back in is what we pay for our bus leasing. And since the last meeting, we've had that firm number at the last meeting. You guys approved the language that will appear on the ballots. And that is basically, it was like $217,000 is what we were able to put back in as an exclusion, and that's what brought it up to the 2.1%. Basically, the way I look at it is, last year, this current year, we budgeted like $206,000. It went up to $217 for the buses. So what we're able to increase in the tax levy basically offsets what the increase is for the busing. So it's not like we're getting an increase here of $12,000 in tax levy. It will cover the cost for the additional $12,000 for the buses.
It's a wash.
It's a wash, right. But it's able to be covered through the tax levy and not through some other line, yes. The revenue, so we'll quickly go back there really hasn't been any changes. I've kept everything the same because we have not heard, a budget has not been passed yet from the state of New York for final numbers there. I've still maintained the reducing the appropriated reserve fund balance to $450,000, and you'll see that's a decline of 13%, 13.46%. That hasn't changed. Obviously, at our next meeting, because it's getting tighter and tighter to find the savings, because now we have the known numbers for most things. That will be one of the options in terms of reducing the difference. Is do we look at not a $70,000 reduction in that appropriated fund balance, but something else to offset that so that we don't make any further cuts on the appropriation side. So that will be, when we talk in April.
So it'd be 160,000 or thereabouts if we decide to do that.
Well,
depending on the shortfall.
Right. Yes. I mean, right now we got about $90,000.
Yeah. Which may change.
If we it might change if April 1st and the budget is a known thing, and we have some more numbers there. That's going to determine what that final difference is.
So I got now for a few minutes.
So, looking ahead, that's questions on the spreadsheet or the tax cap or anything like that?
That will be that.
So if no more questions, the looking ahead is really what we've got coming up next. So on April 2nd, we have work session. Final budget draft will be provided to you then. At that point, again, we have planned to have the board vote on the budget, and we'll see if you're ready to do that. If you're not, I guess we'd have to schedule another meeting.
You can come back. Break.
After the board adopts the budget, that's when then we have to start preparing for the public vote. And so to prepare for the public vote, we do a number of things. We put together the budget booklet, which is a standard item. We have a letter that the board president and the superintendent collaborate on to inform the public. And then we provide some presentations to whomever welcomes them. Rotary Club's always wonderful welcoming our presentation, so we're already scheduled there. We'll do a couple of presentations here to a open audience, and any other? Oh, and then we will certainly present to our middle and high school faculty and staff, our elementary faculty and staff, and our transportation garage employees as well.
No, we go to Wilmington.
And we'll go to Wilmington, yes. Thanks. So, and then the budget vote is on the 21st. And we always want to make sure people know the public is welcome to provide input, feedback on our budget. All the documents are public. You can, the public can access them through Board Docs, just as the board can. And we have the district clerk email available so that anyone can send us an email if they have any input. Questions, comments? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Is this for Kim Williams? Yes. Okay.
So with that said, call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Consent agenda, the recommended action is approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda, which is 8A, the minutes from the March 5th regular Board of Education meeting, and 10D, which is special education. Does anyone want anything, either of those items removed? If not, may I have a motion, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan.
A second.
Thank you, Dan.
Do the old fashioned.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Joan, you?
No, I said I
Oh,
just continue.
5-4, against, the motion passes. Recommended action, proposed executive session. The motion reads, a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing tenure recommendations is anticipated. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Joe. Second, please.
Yes.
Stan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-4 against. We will now go into executive session.